Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to give folks just a couple of seconds to get in here from that waiting room. We're going to give folks a chance to trickle over from that space, and then we will go ahead and get started in just about 15 seconds. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to spend the next half hour with you. It looks like we've got a good amount of folks who have come in from that waiting room. So I'm gonna give myself a couple more seconds before I get started. Awesome. I'm seeing that number slow down. Okay, fabulous. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this fabulous Thursday. My name is Brinton Botkin with the Handshake team, and I'm so excited to welcome you to today's event, How to Build a Dream Career Even If You Don't Have a Dream Job. I'm so excited to be your host today. Just some quick housekeeping notes to get out of the way about what to expect for today's session. We are recording, so if you miss anything, don't worry about it. We will send you that recording tomorrow morning. It'll hit your inbox. We will have a blog post as well where you can access that recording anytime. And you will see a Q&A box down at the bottom of your screens. If you have any questions during today's session, feel free to submit them in that Q&A box. We do have quite a packed agenda today, so I don't know how much time we will have at the end for questions, but if we have a chance to get to one or two, we will try to get to those. So feel free to use that Q&A box throughout our session. Amazing. And with that, I am so thrilled to be joined by Maraya Argueta, the Managing Director for New Listings and Capital Markets at Nasdaq, whose career journey is a very powerful reminder that you don't need a clear dream job to build a fulfilling and successful path. I'm really excited to spend some time with Maraya today. And again, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A throughout the session, and we will get to as many as we can before we wrap it up. But in the interest of time, let's go ahead and get into it. Maraya, I would love to start by talking about your journey. Can you talk about your story, maybe walk us through your first job and how you went from front desk to managing director at Nasdaq?
Yeah, great. I'm happy to be here, excited for the conversation. And certainly, I think, given the topic of not knowing what your dream job is, just taking a step back, when I applied to and got accepted to UCLA, I started with an undeclared major because while I knew I needed to go to college, I didn't know what I wanted to go to college for or what I wanted to do afterwards. So I went in undeclared, tried to figure that out. I ended up majoring in international development studies with a minor in Spanish, mainly because I have a passion for travel and learning about new cultures. So I thought, hey, this might give me some opportunities to incorporate the two things, that I love into a career. And I thought I would join the Foreign Service once I graduated, which would allow me to go work at the embassies in developing countries and really do something I thought I'd enjoy personally. Fast forward to post-graduation, I now needed to take the Foreign Service exam, but I also had to pay bills. So I got a job as a receptionist at a boutique investment bank in Santa Monica. Interestingly, they only hired folks with degrees. I think because they were small and they liked to promote within, that was sort of their requirement so that they knew they could move people into other positions. So I started as a receptionist, and as the company continued to grow, they were looking for someone to join their accounting team. And so they asked if it was something I was interested in. And I had zero accounting background, did not study that in school. But they said they'd pay for me to take classes and that I could just learn what I needed to do on the job. So I said yes. So I started doing accounting for the bank. I did that for a couple of years. In the meanwhile, I was studying for the exam for the Foreign Service role and realized that there was a lot more politics and history that was involved in that. And that's not really something I'm super interested in. So I kind of kept postponing taking that test and was focusing on the opportunities that were in front of me. So I did accounting for a couple of years. Part of that role, I was tasked with rolling out the Concur expense management system throughout the bank. And then we also had an equity research platform at the bank, and Concur was one of the companies that the equity research analyst was covering. And so we both happened to go to a user conference for the expense management company, and we're networking and got to speak with like the CFOs of the company. And then the next day, the analyst at my bank called me and was just like, hey, I need an associate. Do you want to join my equity research team? And I was just like, I don't even know what equity research is, really. Like, I know we have a platform, but I was like, I don't really know what you do. I don't know much about the stock market. I don't even know how you buy stock, right? Like, we didn't have Robinhood back then. Like, so consumer investing or retail investing wasn't as popular as it is now. And he was like, look, you have an accounting background, and I've seen how you can network with C-level executives, and everything else you need to know, I can teach you. He's like, all I ask is that you commit to 1 year so that you give it a try. If you hate it, you can quit. But hopefully you don't and you stay. So I said yes. So then I went into equity research. I did that for about a year. I didn't actually quit. They ended up shutting down the platform, and so I got laid
No.
off.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Um, but my manager and I had a really good relationship. And so he walked me over to the Blue Shirt Group, which is an investor relations firm, and basically told him Maraya would be a great hire. You should interview her. So I interviewed for investor relations. Again, something I've never done before, not really in my like wheelhouse of things, but a lot of my skills I had learned in the other jobs were transferable. So I interviewed, I got the job. I ended up doing investor relations for 4 years. And then I met a boy who lived in the UK.
A classic story, a classic.
And so I ended up getting a work visa that allowed me to move to London without a job. And I quit the Blue Shirt Group. Um, And when I quit, so I guess when I was at the Blue Shirt Group, we worked with a lot of Nasdaq listed companies, and I was a power user of the tools that Nasdaq provided for their public listed companies. So when I quit, a head of sales from Nasdaq in San Francisco called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to join my sales team? Because we know like how much you use these tools, and we think you'd be really good at, trying to get other companies to buy them." And I was like, yeah, that would be great, but I'm moving to London. So logistically, I don't think that's going to work. But if you happen to know anyone in London, I'd love an introduction. So he introduced me to the head of sales in London for NASDAQ. So once I got out to the UK, I met him for coffee, had a little interview, and then I got a job on the sales team. And I've been with NASDAQ for 14 years now, with a variety of roles within the company.
Wow, okay, there are a couple of threads that I would love to tug on, but really the fact that you had no idea about this industry and this space and you ended up kind of flourishing in all of these different types of roles and in these different capacities, but also the very real thing of being asked to do equity research and having to like Google what is equity research. That is so real. And I think something that not enough people talk about. But it's very clear you didn't always expect that you would end up in finance. And you majored in international development studies, you had potentially dreams of becoming an ambassador. But are there any skills that you learned during school, even with an unrelated major, that have served you well in your current career path, even if that major didn't necessarily align with where you've ended up today?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I often laugh because as much as I enjoyed my major, I don't know that anything I learned from it is really helping me in my job today from a subject matter area, right? But I think what I did learn a lot in college that does help when you're in the working world are more those kind of skills like time management, prioritization, and networking. You're going to hear me talk a lot about networking because I think it's extremely important. But you think about when you're in college, you have multiple classes, you have different projects you're working on, you have different exams that are coming up. You might be working on the side depending on your lifestyle, right? And you want to hang out and be with your friends. So there's a level of time management and prioritization of how are you going to get all of these things done? How are you going to meet those deadlines? Are you staying up late cramming for an exam, right? You're working with other students who are engaging with teachers, mentors, the community. Um, all of those elements translate so well into the working world, because when you're here, whatever job you're in, you're going to have deadlines and you're going to have to meet those regardless of what's happening in your life or what other projects like pop up. So knowing how to manage your time to make sure you're meeting those deadlines is extremely important. And prioritizing, because you're going to get asks from different people and you can't always do all of it. So knowing where to spend your time and what's going to be the most impactful and what's the most important for the company in your role, I think are all skill sets that transferred over. And then, yeah, networking, it's huge when it comes to career growth. So I think just learning to build those relationships with different people, like you're going to work with so many different personalities in your life. And some people you're going to love, and some people you might not like so much, but you still have to work with them, and you still need to know how to work with them and have a good partnership. And so I think those are all skill sets that you, at least I developed in college, that I've been able to apply to my career.
I love that. Those really critical, more soft skills almost that come out of the time that you spend in college prove to be the ones that are the most essential for success in the workplace. Thank you so much. And so one theme that I noticed in your overview of your career path is the theme of kind of saying yes. It sounds like you said yes to a lot of opportunities, unexpected roles and chances that were given to you, big changes, moves, and industry shifts. What types of things did you say yes to early in your career, and why do you think those types of opportunities presented themselves to you?
Good question. Um, so the things I said, I pretty much said yes to everything. Um, and I think part of it is that if you don't say yes, you don't know if you're gonna succeed or fail, right? But like, and you might fail, because people do fail and it's okay to fail. But if you don't try it, you're not gonna know either way. And so everything that got presented to me, I viewed as an opportunity to try something new and develop my skill set, right? And the equity research analyst who was like, just commit for a year, and if you hate it, fine, you can go do something else, but at least you know if you like it. And so I've kind of had that mindset throughout my life with everything. I mean, even moving to the UK, my dad thought I was absolutely crazy. He was just like, why are you quitting your job to move to a foreign country? And I was like, because it's a fun opportunity. I'm sure I'll find a new job, and if things don't work out, I'll just buy a plane ticket and come home. Like, it's, having the kind of mindset of like, you try it, it might work, it might not work. Luckily, my trip to the UK did work, because I am now married with children to the person I moved out there for. So, but from a career perspective, saying yes to all those opportunities led to the next one. And the skills that I developed in each one of those roles became a transferable skill that I could then apply to that next job. And it helped me with that conversation. So even though I've never done, I had never done investor relations, but I knew equity research and accounting, and those were all elements that would help in the IR world. When I went into sales, I'd never done sales. Like, I've never actually sold and had someone sign a contract. But when you're in investor relations, you're getting people to understand a company story and want to buy their stock, right? So it's like a different type of sale. So it's just knowing how you take those skills and apply it to the next opportunity.
Yeah, identifying those through lines and the things that kind of can follow you into your next opportunity. That's great. And I mean, how did you know what to say yes to? Is there any guidance for kind of finding the balance between demonstrating that you're eager and you're willing to learn and you've got that learner's mindset, but also developing the expertise that really lets you build those skills that you can bring on in the future?
Yeah. I think for me, it's was being very honest. I'm a very honest person. I know for some people that might not be great, but I'm very open, and I like to set the stage so that no one has like unexpected things, or everyone knows what's on the table. So for me, with all those conversations, I was very open. I was like, I don't know what this is, or I don't have that experience, right? So I was very clear about what I did and did not know. But I was also very clear about the fact that I was eager to learn and willing to commit the time to develop those skills that I didn't already have. So I think it's a balance between the two, right? And then I think it's also just focusing and being good at what you do know, because then you're able to take those skills over with you to the next job.
I love that. And okay, you mentioned this earlier as something you think is really important, and I already see that we've gotten a couple of questions about this, but what role did networking play along the way for you during your career? I know you received a job offer the day after you attended an event with somebody that you worked with. Can you share a little bit more about networking?
Yeah. So I am a huge believer that networking it's not going to get you the job. You still have to be good at what you do and like have the dedication and, build a brand, all that kind of stuff. There's work that goes into it, but networking will open doors for you. And then if you need that extra support, like that validation, and you have a good network, that's going to help you as well. So for me, in my career, the only job that I have had that I applied to as a cold application was that first job as the receptionist. Every job that I've had since then has been linked to me knowing somebody or like someone introducing me to someone, right? So I've not had to go through that process of submitting cold applications, which I know is extremely challenging, especially in today's market. I think there was a stat that was saying that like if you get referred into a company, you're like 4 to 5 times more likely to have your resume reviewed and hired. Whereas the cold applications that get submitted through like LinkedIn and those other sort of systems, about 75% of them don't even make it to a real person because they just get eliminated through the automated system. And so you imagine if you aren't networking and you don't know somebody, you'll probably fall into that 75% of folks that aren't even getting their resume looked at. Whereas if you know somebody, and even if you don't know someone senior, just if you know anybody at the company, they can put your resume through. And most companies have internal like referral systems, right? Like I know at Nasdaq, they encourage us to bring in folks. So if I have someone I know and put them forward, there's a benefit to me if they get hired. So I know a lot of companies do that. And so, yeah, I think networking it's just really important. You can do that a lot of different ways too. Like you can do networking within your company. You can network at conferences, just going to community events and meetups, and then just also staying in touch because I think it's easy to go meet someone and then never talk to them again. So it's just, yeah, I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, and I think to your point, your first job being the one that you were able to kind of get in through a cold application, but then the networking becoming more critical as you advanced in your career and kind of developed and became more tenured. I think that's such an important thing to develop those skills and build that muscle as you kind of navigate your early career so that you can leverage those connections later on. Thank you for sharing that, and hopefully we'll have some time to get for a couple of the questions that have come in over the course of you chatting about networking. But many students, I think, are entering companies without a set plan. This sounds like kind of what you were doing when you got that front desk job, hoping to figure it out as they go. What are some ways that you've seen people grow by trying new things within the same organization or same company? And this could either be within Nasdaq, where I know you've been for over 10 years and have worn a lot of different hats, or different companies that you've observed throughout your work.
Yeah, I mean, Nasdaq's really good in the sense that we have a lot of structured programs. So Nasdaq has mentoring programs, we have job shadowing programs. So if you are interested in learning about a different position, either within your same business unit or a different business unit, you can sign up for that. It gives you an opportunity to just understand what they're doing, what that world is like, and is it of interest to you. We also do like lunch and learns where like we'll have someone from a different business unit come and just explain at a very basic level, this is what we do. So I think if you're at a company that has structured programs like that, taking advantage of those is really important. Not everyone does, right? I know some people think that they kind of wait for their manager to say, okay, it's time for your promotion, or here's a new role I want you to have. And that might happen sometimes, but you do have to be proactive about trying to get those conversations to happen. And if you are actively participating in these programs, then you're meeting new people, which is networking, right? So then when a new job comes up in a department that you are interested in, you have someone that you can reach out to in that department to say, hey, I sat in on the lunch and learn, or I'm doing the shadowing program. I see there's a new role I'm really interested in. And then it makes, again, that conversation just a lot easier. So I would say take part in those. But if you're at a company that doesn't have that structure, you can still do all of that on your own, right? Like you can monitor your job postings, right, to see what's coming up. But you can look at all of the different teams within your company and just proactively reach out to people and say, hey, do you have 20 minutes to grab a coffee? Right? Like, I just want to pick your brain about what you do, what's in your role. I want to understand it a little bit better. And again, like if you're starting out and you might not want to go to the most senior people in that role until you kind of have established more of a relationship. But even just starting with other people similar level or slightly higher, right? Like that gives you an opportunity to build that network and learn a bit more.
Thank you for that. And I guess my last question for this kind of structured part of the conversation before we get into some of the audience submitted Q&A, I'd love to hear if you have any pros or cons when it comes to growing your career at a single company versus job hopping. I think we hear a lot about the benefits of job hopping, and folks are quite inclined to do that these days. But obviously, you are somebody who's put down roots at Nasdaq. You've been able to grow within the singular kind of organization. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say for me, I think one of the big pros of staying in a place is that you've had time to establish your personal brand and build those relationships. So again, I started with NASDAQ in the UK and had a few different roles out there. So I was able to move from an individual contributor in the sales team and the account management team to running account management for EMEA, which was my last role before I left the UK. And that progression happened because the person that was hiring for that manager role was also involved in the individual contributor role. So they were aware of what my work ethic was. They knew how I delivered on things. They already knew my capabilities. So when I went to go apply for that manager role, they were looking at managers like people candidates externally and internally, but I already had a very good sense of what was working and what was not working within the company and what changes needed to happen. So it made more sense to give me that position because the ramp time to bring on someone new would have been shorter and we could just start doing the job a lot faster, right? So I think there's elements of, establishing your brand, people know who you are, and that will help get those opportunities of growth. I think there's also a work-life balance element. For me personally, I'm a working mom. And I have a 2.5-year-old, I have a 9-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, but it's a very time consuming element of my life. And because I've been with NASDAQ for so long, I know, and they know me and they know I'm going to deliver and get everything done. It gives me that flexibility of, if I have to stay home because my 2-year-old has a stomach virus, that's fine. Like they know I'm still going to get my job done. I don't have to like prove myself the same way you do when you are starting a new job because I've already done that, right? I've already given them the trust that or built the trust with them. I think when you go to a new company, you're sort of starting over. You're having to rebuild your brand with that new group of people. You're having to build the trust again. I would say one of the downfalls though is that a lot of companies do have like internal salary caps when they do promotions, right? They'll limit it to a certain percentage of what you're already on. So a lot of times if you are looking for a larger bump in your salary, going externally sometimes is what will get you that. but then you just have those other elements you have to consider. So it's really a personal choice of like what makes sense for where you are in your career at that time.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. It's like you have to do your own prioritization of like what are the things that matter to you the most at this phase. Thank you so much. It looks like we have about 5 minutes to get to some of the questions that have come in. And I'm not surprised at all, but a lot of those questions have to do with networking. So I'm hoping we can spend a little bit of time on that. We have some questions about how to network without sounding disingenuous. How do you kind of do that outreach and kind of build those connections? We have another similar question that's, one of the main goals during my gap year is to network. How do you gently inquire about job and internship opportunities without seeming too pushy or forward? Can you talk a little bit about striking the balance of being genuine and kind of making the most of networking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a very honest person, so I'm very open about what it is what my intent is, right? Like, so I guess looking at it the other way, I've had companies and I've had students and I've had other folks reach out to me, mainly on LinkedIn, with like messages that are like, "Hey, I'm curious about your role at Nasdaq," or "I've seen this role and I'd love to learn a little bit more. Do you have time, like, to chat with me?" And sometimes people will reply and sometimes they don't. I reply sometimes. I don't reply all the time because LinkedIn is a world of chaos. But I think that just kind of pulling out, putting your feelers out there, you're going to get somebody who will talk to you, right? Like not everyone will reply, but I think you need to not get put off by that either, right? Like you just kind of have to put a lot of feelers out there. Eventually someone will have that chat with you. Um, you know, I think when you go to events, it's just like, it's being curious, ask questions, like just think of it as a learning experience. Just like, what do you do? What's interesting about your job, right? Like, especially when you're a student and you're coming into that kind of the role, you're not expected to be the expert in the space. So you can ask a lot of questions. I think when you're further along in your career, then the types of questions that you can get away with asking are a little bit different. But yeah, I think just being genuine and being yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to put you back in your front desk seat. Put yourself in the mindset of you're in this job that is kind of unrelated to what you've been studying. You're not really sure what path is ahead of you. We have a couple of questions in that frame of mind. One person is asking if you don't have a career path or a dream career planned, how do you answer the interview question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? Do you have any advice for how folks can kind of navigate that type of inquiry?
That is a good question. Um, I feel like I have had that question before, and I'm trying to think of how I did answer it. But I think you could probably just do something along the lines of the fact that you are still trying to figure out where that is going to go, right? Right now, you're focused, like if you're, I don't know, if you're interviewing for a software engineer. I'm not a software engineer, it's probably a bad example, but say that's what you're interviewing for, right? And they ask you that question, then you probably could think about where would a software engineer be in 5 years and then come up with something related to that, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm starting my career right now. In 5 years, I'd love to be developing my own product or contributing to a company to create a new right? Like you would have to think about what the individual role you're interviewing for, and then kind of think about where that might be in 5 years. It might not actually be where you want to be in 5 years, and it might not be where you're going to end up in 5 years. But if you're doing an interview for a job, then you probably want it to be linked to that job. If you're having a more casual conversation with someone, I think then you can be very open and be like, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I love one of the things that you included in that answer is almost talking about rather than like a very crystal idea of one singular role, it's almost more of like a milestone or a type of project that you're going to be owning, a skill that you're going to be developing. highlighting those things that do align with your interests and kind of pulling those out. I would love to be somebody who's managing people in 5 years, or I would love to be
Yes.
somebody who's taken a stronger hand in project ownership when I think about myself in 5 years. Like having those things that might be true, even if it's a completely unrelated industry or a completely different job than the one that you're going to be in. I think being able to call those things out allows you to engage a little bit more genuinely there. Okay, final question and similar flavor, but how do I stay motivated at a job, company, or industry that I don't have plans on staying in for the long term? I accepted a role at a company because of how hard the job market is right now, and it was my only offer, but I have plans to go into other industries and roles in the future. How can I stay motivated in the right now?
I would think about what you need to help you with that next role, because when you interview for the next job, they're going to ask you for examples of things that you've accomplished, right? So if you're not focused and you're not dedicating yourself to whatever your current role is, then you might struggle to have those examples. So if you think about like this as more of a learning experience, so I'm taking a year to learn about whatever the role is that you took, to develop those skills, and then making a list of all the things that you've accomplished. When you're going in for the interview for the next one, you could say, hey, I did all of this stuff. Also, think about the networking element, right? Get to know your colleagues. Even if you're not going to be there, you don't know where they're going to go next. So they might end up at a different company. And if they remember you and they remember that you did a good job, then again, that whole referral thing, right? You're going to have a better chance of getting a job where there's somebody that you know.
Yeah, I love that. I grew my career in media and now I work in tech marketing, and you'd be surprised at the amount of people who have that same pipeline, even though it's completely unrelated. So that's a really good note. Thank you so much, Mariah. Huge thank you. And to everybody who joined us here today, thank you as well. If you are still figuring out your next step or your first step, make sure that you explore more opportunities on Handshake. It's a great place to kind of figure out what those roles might be. We are here to support you at every stage of your journey. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your energy and attention today. And Mariah, thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Of course, thank you.
All right, have a good one. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.